You took my wife. You hurt my son. I won't stand for this anymore. Gojo Satoru, you shall pay. Domain expansion! What's up, guys? I love Hunter, and here we are to create a domain expansion for the mighty beast of the 10 Shadows, Mahoraga. Now, I know a lot of people are like, wait. Pencil. Since when can Shikigami use domain expansions? And to that I say, when has it been stated that they can't? If curses can use domain expansions, even the most random of curses can whip out a thick old juicy domain. If random fodder, like the smallpox deity, can have domains of its own, or an innate domain like the random special grade that get like legitimately, if all them thingamajigs can have a domain, you're telling me the strongest member of the 10 Shadows... Sorry. You're telling me the strongest member of the 10 Shadows can't? Come on now. Let me have this. And here's the thing, right? There are a couple reasons why I believe that Mahoraga could have a domain. One is boring, one is not as boring, and one is actually kind of fun. And all of these things in combination are what we're going to be covering in order to make Mahoraga a domain. So what's up, guys? That was the pencil here. Fun fact, have it on me, and I keep it on me at all times. And just like Mahoraga has it on him and keeps it on him at all times. And the thing is, when specifically discussing a domain for Mahoraga in particular, you have certain factors that need to come into play. Number one, what does a domain need to specifically function properly and not just be a simple domain or an innate domain? Presumably, a domain needs a specific curse technique to be imbued into it. That's why a lot of people think most Shikigami cannot have domains, because most Shikigami do not have a curse technique. At best, they have curse energy traits. For example, let's look at the rest of the 10 Shadows. What is Divine Dog's domain expansion going to be? It doesn't even have hands to make the hand sign, so obviously it's not going to be able to open a domain, and the only innate technique it has is... And to be fair, we've seen people with claws for their technique, but still, I highly doubt there's a domain there. Same thing with something as complicated as Nue. Nue has an electrical curse type energy, I suppose. Like, it has the same electrical trait that Kashimo has, but an electrical trait does not mean a curse technique, as we also see with Kashimo, who has the trait, but has a seemingly most like related technique, but not actually a technique, which specifically comes from the nature of his curse energy. But Mahoraga does in fact have a technique. Dare I say, he's the only two out of the 10 Shadows that do have a technique. The only other one I would say verbatim has a technique, even though it has not been clarified as one, is the Piercing Bull, because, like, it runs more and more and it builds up more and more power. That seems like a technique-based thing. I don't think that's just basic momentum stuff. I think that actually is a technique, but you aren't going to catch me trying to make a domain expansion for the Piercing Bull. If you want me to, it's literally just like a straight line, and you need to keep punching it back. I don't know, whatever. But Mahoraga very specifically does have a technique, and that technique is the adaptation, the spinning of that wheel right above its head. And this is where it could get interesting, because not only does Mahoraga have that technique, now the Mahoraga that we're specifically creating a domain for, the Mahoraga that is currently spawned in the Battle of Gojo and Sukuna, is one that seemingly enough is imbued with Sukuna's techniques. So that leaves us with 3 specific avenues to go down for Mahoraga's technique. In my opinion, the boring route, where he simply reflects his wielder's domain. Now, this could be hypothetically interesting, but we'll get into that in a second. Then there's the second route, where it's just a basic expansion of the adaptation, which we'll cover. You know, considering domains can just be technique pluses, it could be entirely possible that the adaptation just gets a nice boost inside Mahoraga's innate domain. We'll talk about that. And finally, we'll talk about a fun one that kind of incorporates a bunch of different things from a bunch of different domains. But let's not waste any more time, and let's hop right into the first one, the basic domain expansion. It is literally just Mahoraga getting Sukuna's domain. Like, notably in chapter 234, Sukuna explicitly notes, "Ayo, bring Mahoraga. I know you're not playing me right now, bro. Like, I know you're not Megami Shadow anymore. You're mine. Get to work." And Mahoraga whips out what is specifically noted to be a cleave. or dismantle. It's noted to be Sukuna slashes. We don't actually get a clarification on which one it is. Like, even in the official translation, I'll double check right now. I don't believe we get like concrete confirmation of what the slash is, but it's specifically noted as Sukuna slashes. Sukuna praises Mahoraga for using his technique. Everyone's shocked that's Mahoraga being able to use the technique, all that good stuff. So essentially, this is basically Gojo having to face Mahoraga imbued with Sukuna's technique, since Mahoraga was born of Sukuna's shadow. And of course, if Mahoraga has access to Sukuna's technique, he is imbued with it as an intermediary for Sukuna, simply a piece of Sukuna's abilities, then it would stand to reason that Mahoraga could just whip out a little bit of a malevolent shrine. Now, the question is, would it be influenced at all by Mahoraga and its innate technique? Would it have an adaptation property? The reason I say not necessarily is because Malevolent Shrine technically already comes with an adaptation property. Remember, Cleave in general is supposed to adjust to the cursed energy level of the target. That is something that's meant to happen. The only hypothetical boost I could see Mahoraga getting from a domain expansion or giving a boost to Malevolent Shrine is the idea that, in a similar vein to Mahoraga being able to completely bypass Gojo's healing and durability, the adaptation of the cleave is raised to another level where it will literally just go straight through, regardless of any durability. In a similar effect to the Soul Split Katana, where the Soul Split Katana ignores all conventional durability and just straight attacks the soul. I don't think Maharaga's does that, because we see Gojo heal his arm later. His basic cleave or dismantle or whatever he hit Gojo with, I don't think it does that. But it could be the case where the Duraneg is absolute. Instead of being something that could hypothetically be negated through good RCT or quick speed or really, really high durability or insane amounts of cursed energy, no. In this case, when Mahoraga uses Malevolent Shrine, the cleaves are going to cleave you, whether you want them to or not. Simple as that. I call it the most boring one because we've already gotten a bunch of Malevolent Shrine in this fight, and trust me, I think it's neat. I like a Burialist Domain. It is one of the 2 Burialist Domains in the entire series. But, I'm not the biggest fan of it, just because we've gotten so much of it as of recent. Even with the 4 or 5 chapter break we've gotten from Malevolent Shrine, I'm not sure. But I do like the idea of Mahoraga being able to use Malevolent Shrine simply because he is an extension of Sukuna. Everything Sukuna can do, Mahoraga can do. And I think that'd be neat. However, that also leads to another idea. Considering the 10 Shadows technique is Mahoraga's technique, or technically it's the 10 Shadows user's technique is the 10 Shadows, obviously. It could be entirely possible that instead of whipping out something like Malevolent Shrine, Mahoraga could whip out Chimera Shadow Garden. Now, notably, I'm not exactly sure how it would work in Mahoraga's hands, or even in Sukuna's hands, because remember, we never actually got to see the absolute version of the technique. What is the sure hit of the 10 Shadows technique? If it's supposed to have one, would it just be you getting dragged immediately into the Shadow Realm? We know that Mahoraga / Sukuna / 10 Shadows user can trap people in the Shadow Realm, but the upper limitations of that, how that properly functions, none of that is clarified. And thusly, we don't know. It could just be Mahoraga jumping Gojo with a million Mahoragas. Could work. We know that Megumi's domain expansion was almost open barriered anyway, mainly because Megumi sucked at using barrier techniques. So maybe the open barrier effect kicks in through Sukuna's mastery of domain and Mahoraga embodying Sukuna and embodying the 10 Channels technique. And actually, how would that work? Could Mahoraga summon more Mahoragas? I don't know. I saw an interesting, I forget which video it was on, and my apologies. If you are the commenter, don't be afraid to call yourself out on this one. But someone commented, hypothetically, the reason that Mahoraga is sort of able to summon itself, or like seemingly break conventional rules of summoning, and just seems to be completely different in comparison to the rest of the Shikigami of the 10 Shadows, is because technically Mahoraga is the 10 Shadows user. In the same vein that not only does it embody the user of the 10 Shadows and its abilities, but also it could hypothetically activate the technique on its own. But I'm a little confused on whether or not it could summon more of itself, because like, wouldn't that break it? I don't know. We know copies can be summoned endlessly within Megumi's incomplete domain. So hypothetical completed domain may just send Mahoraga through the roof. But those are the two ideas. It would simply be Mahoraga adapting and releasing a domain that is based on its user, whether that be the 10 shadows to a completed Chimera Shadow Garden or a absolute Malevolent Shrine. Both are nice enough ideas. I think they're neat. We haven't seen a completed Chimera Shadow Garden ever, and seeing Mahoraga whip it out and be like, Chimera Shadow Garden, and dropping it would be really, really metal. Don't get me wrong. But in my opinion, it's the most boring. It's not anything new and practical. One of the best things about domains, one of the reasons I think they became so popular, is because every single time you get a new one, there are different effects. There's different mystery behind it. There's new designs. And thusly, I would like to give Mahoraga a unique domain. And that leads into the next step. Adaptation plus. Now, hypothetically, maybe Mahoraga cannot produce a sure hit, right? Because the adaptation technique is inherently non-offensive. Like, think about something like Malevolent Shrine. It's a pretty offensive technique. Shrine with Cleave and Dismantle is meant to attack you. For something like the Limitless, even though I do kind of go along, it's stated, that's the thing though. It's that one statement from Gojo in chapter 15 that throws the whole idea of Unlimited Void being a 6-size domain expansion rather than a Limitless domain expansion in question. Because Gojo literally says you're inside the Limitless. But in terms of the Limitless, it's an offensive technique still. It has defensive properties, and it has information manipulation properties with the 6 eyes involved, but even still, it makes sense that it has an offensive sure hit. Same thing with something like Jogo's domain, or Mahito's domain, or Dagon's domain. Like, all these things have innate offense built into their base techniques, thus when expanded to their domain expansions, it makes sense to me. However, for Mahoraga, adaptation is mostly a defensive technique. It seems to have offensive applications in the sense that we see the adaptation wheel spin in 234 to give Mahoraga access to Shrine, or at least part of Shrine, and we've seen it adapt into changing the type of energy it releases from an RCT blade for cursed spirits to a cursed energy reinforced blade for humans or sorcerers. So it does have offensive adaptations, but what would the sure hit of a Mahoraga domain be in its simplest form? It could literally be that there isn't a sure hit. I know that seems weird, right? But once again, the adaptation is really hard to think of a sure hit for. So what I would imagine would happen in this domain is that a rule is set, and that rule is no matter what, no matter how, no matter why, if Mahoraga has adapted to your technique, you cannot activate it. It is something that neutralizes all curse techniques that Mahoraga is already adapted to. So instead of Mahoraga having to make contact with you, say you're Satoru Gojo, and you have a passive technique like Limitless, one of the biggest issues that Mahoraga's companions have in Sukuna and Ahito is that in order for them to actually hit Gojo, Mahoraga had to be in physical contact with Gojo in order to shut down his Limitless technique and negate the neutral Limitless. But in Mahoraga's domain expansion, since everything under the sun that Mahoraga has already adapted to is turned off and banned, essentially, in a similar vein to how Higuruma's domain bans violence, then thusly, anybody could attack in a specific way. And then the person who's trapped inside the domain cannot use their techniques. Gojo could not whip out blue. Gojo could not activate the neutral Limitless. We've seen Mahoraga start to adapt to red. So if you want to push it to the limits, Gojo couldn't even activate red. Like, that would heavily nerf Gojo down. Would it stop purple? Maybe. He couldn't do domain expansion. That's another thing about this. Specifically with this Mahoraga, Gojo couldn't perform domain expansion even if he wasn't brain damaged. So domain expansion has already been off the table, but it'd be extra off the table in the case of this domain. And on top of that, if blue and red cannot be activated per the context of this domain, it's entirely possible that since purple is the fusion of blue and red, Gojo wouldn't even be able to release that. Now, notably, we know that if Mahoraga does have a domain expansion, he doesn't use it in the next, 41 seconds? What does it say at the end of 234? 41 seconds from now, for the second time, Satoru Gojo's Hollow Purple will cut through Shinjuku. So obviously we know that it's not it's not happening immediately after this if this domain were to be used, but it could just absolutely turn off a technique. That's the crazy thing about it. And you could make it even more broken. You could say, instead of selectively taking phenomena of a technique that have occurred, it just shuts down the entire technique. If Mahoraga has adapted to a piece of it, Gojo would literally go blind. Okay, maybe not go blind, because once again, 6 eyes adaptation is weird. Like, once again, unless you think Unlimited Void is 6 eyes, weird stuff. But even still, you could have it that the whole Limitless technique is just shut down. Gojo has no other options but raw fisticuffs. And while that still leaves Gojo with he may be out of long range weaponry, but he isn't out of options. Like, he would definitely still be able to box a little bit. That would still be extremely dangerous because it would shut down everything. This would once again kind of fit into the utility niche of Mahoraga being able to slay pretty much anything. Because as long as it's adapted and you can't use your technique inside its domain, I guess you're cooked. Rough stuff, buddy. I guess you lost. And for this domain name, I would call it... See, it sounds so stupid, though. I'd call it Absolute Void. Because it would literally void it'd almost be like violating a contract. You know how when you sign a contract, but you go against the contract, you voided anything you get with that contract? It would essentially be that, where it would be an absolute void of everything that Mahoraga has already adapted to. You've made the contractual agreement with Mahoraga that this won't do much damage. This will do no damage. All that, you've done that. Well, now you can't use it anymore. But obviously, as hard as it is to come with a sure hit for this kind of domain, doesn't mean I don't want to try. And this is where I think you could incorporate a little fun thing with Mahoraga. For the sure hit of an adaptation-based curse technique, it could literally be that every single time that you go to move, boom, you get hit. And whatever part of you that you try to attack with or move with or breathe with gets broken or snapped, or something happens to it where it's unadapted. Your hand usually goes like this, your hand's backwards and broken now. You try to breathe, your lungs collapse. You try to step, your legs snap, like everything. The sure hit would be very similar to the sure hit of Naoya's domain, where if you moved in Naoya's domain, Time Cell Moon Palace, what would end up happening is that, you're falling apart because your cells are moving out of order. But in the case of the sure hit for Mahoraga's domain, instead of moving and, oh no, bada bing, bada boom, I lost my hand, you would specifically have to be attempting to do harm. And that would be the workaround to this domain. Sure, it has the sure hit, and hypothetically, every single motion you make would likely be construed as harm, but you could work around it. You could fight it off. And of course, there are certain things you'd still be able to do. Like, hypothetically, if your healing is good enough, you could just heal through the damage. So say Gojo goes to punch, and then every single bone in his hand is broken. He could heal in the same instant and still punch through it, but with his healing output being lowered, him suddenly breaking every single thing he's doing, every single thing, every other attack he tries to fire gets absolutely shut down because his body's literally unadapting to it. Could be kind of crazy, could be kind of devious. Only thing is, though, I'm not sure if anyone else would be able to function in this domain. Because, like, presumably this would apply to everybody, at least for something like the previous domain, which it didn't have the sure hit, where it would shut down the opponent's techniques. You could say, oh, that locks on to somebody, a particular opponent, and then they can't do anything. But for this second domain, like, if you're in it, you're breaking your body by simply moving. Your legs are snapping, your arms are breaking, your fingers are cracking, like everything hurts. Heck, maybe even thinking violent thoughts would cause your brain to just whoop. That could be the upper limit of this insane domain. And you may say, whoa, Pencil, isn't that a little bit too we're talking about Mahoraga, all right? I'm talking about Mahoraga. If we're gonna have the Ten Shadows Divine General be a beast, a monster, and a demon, we're gonna have the Divine General be a monster, a beast, and a demon. And I think giving him a technique this broken still fits within the niche of adaptation, still fits in the general defensive profile of adaptation. It gives it the offensive profile of still harming the opponent through the sure hit. How would you avoid it? You just don't. You just perish. Like, I'm sorry. You 9 out of 10 times you lose. Unless your name is Satoru Gojo, you're going to lose if inside that domain. Even if your name is Satoru Gojo, like, I'm not sure how you would. Because, like, would healing count as an act to induce harm if you're still trying to heal? Like, I'm not sure. You could go to the moon with that domain. But, even still, that's a nice idea, you know? It fits within the adaptation needs, all me and stuff like that. But you know what would be intriguing? You know what would be intriguing? Considering we know Mahoraga has many different adaptations and many different resistances that come with the adaptation. For the final domain idea, what if instead of the sure hit being something like Malevolent Shrine or whatever, where it's the user of the Ten Shadows technique imbuing themselves in Mahoraga, or instead of the sure hit being simply an extension of the adaptation of Mahoraga, or even having no sure hit and just having a domain with the extended rule set of adaptation, the final idea I have for a Mahoraga domain is that every single thing it's adapted to becomes a sure hit for the opponent. Yeah. So, once again, let's just use Gojo as an example here. I'll reference Yorozu in a bit because that could be fun too. But let's use Gojo as an example here. Mahoraga has adapted to Unlimited Void. Now, that sure hit that once plagued Mahoraga, or Megami who underwent the burden of adaptation, bada bing, bada boom, snap, shunk. Now, Gojo would be hit by the effects of Unlimited Void. He'd have to take his own sure hit. Blue. Maximum output blue, all that good stuff, the mystical magical color of blue. Now that is a sure hit that is being manifested since Mahoraga's already adapted to that. The neutral limitless is harder to do, but the neutral limitless is an extension of blue, as you guys have clarified for me. So maybe, I'm not sure how that would work. You could literally just say Mahoraga now has the neutral limitless. Any defensive technique that has been adapted to now gets applied to Mahoraga. Which is stupid. But still, once again, we're making a domain expansion for Mahoraga. I'm trying to go as stupid and as broken as possible, simply because it is Mahoraga. And with that being the case, it would get the neutral limitless. Gojo wouldn't even be able to harm it anymore unless he's using domain amplification. Then, on top of that, once again, we've seen the wheel spin after Mahoraga got smacked in the face by a weakened red. Suddenly, a sure hit red, smacking you in the face, smacking Gojo in the face. And it just gets going crazier and crazier and crazier. And it makes it so that the more Mahoraga has adapted to, the more sure hits get stalked. How would that work, though? I'm not exactly sure how that would work. Like, would it be like a sequence effect where you get hit by a sure hit of blue, then hit by a sure hit of red, then hit by a sure hit of Malevolent Shrine or whatever, like, or Unlimited Void, then you get hit by that. Like, I'm not sure if it would be a progression thing or if it would be like an all at once thing. Like, notably with Dagon's domain, we know the sure hit of that, like, it spawned multiple Shikigami instantaneously as they were attacking you on top of you. So maybe for Mahoraga's domain it would work like that, where it's just bombarding. Everything hits you all at the same time, which would essentially be impossible to defend against. This is a very similar thing that I brought up in the Yuta video when I was trying to create him a domain. And one of the reasons this is so hard for me to say that it's something that Geya would do is because it seems a little bit too broken. Because at least with one consistent sure hit, you can try and work around that. Unlimited Void, very difficult to work around, but you can find a workaround to it. Malevolent Shrine, very difficult to work around, but you can find a workaround to it. I'm not sure what the workaround for this one would be, because you'd be getting hit by multiple different types of attacks all at the same time. As you're trying to repel the blue that's trying to drag you in, you're being dragged in by a red. As your brain's being flooded with information, as you're getting torn open by cleaves or dismantles, all at the same time. And note, any one of these individually as a sure hit would be devastating. But imagine all of these stockpiled on top of each other, all at the same time. It would basically be unbeatable. Though once again, it would only be as strong as how adapted Mahoraga is. So hypothetically, if Mahoraga were to open this domain, but hasn't adapted to anything, it's useless. Like, there literally isn't a sure hit. That isn't a sure hit to this domain. But that would play into the idea that the Ten Shadows user needs to play it smart with Mahoraga. Ultimately, let Mahoraga adapt to a bunch of stuff so that the longer a fight goes on, the more phenomena Mahoraga experiences and adapts to, its domain just keeps getting stronger and stronger and stronger. Just like Mahoraga gets stronger and stronger and stronger the more it gets adapted to things. This domain more so fits into the general feel of Mahoraga. Mahoraga is extremely powerful at base. Do not get me wrong. It is a monster and a beast naturally from Rip. Even when summoned by a 15-year-old like Megami. But, with that being the case, it is preferably incremental Shikigami. It is a technique that gets stronger and stronger the more it is used in one continuous battle, thusly fitting that domain, rolling it into that kind of theme where, yes, it's strong at start, but it isn't strong enough at start with the base no sure hit at all, and then just keep stacking. I think that makes it more fair. Would it be fair for Gojo if he were to get hit by this domain? No, Mahoraga's already, like, adapted to, what, 5 different phenomena, likely blue, red, limited void, not purple yet, but then cleave and dismantle. It's 5 things right there that would all be hitting Gojo at the same time. So yeah, Gojo would be cooked, but I still think it'd be neat. It would be, in my opinion, the most interesting because it means that if you play your cards right and you just insta one-shot Mahoraga, you never have to worry about its domain. The thing with the earlier variations of the domain is if it just has Malevolent Shrine, you have to deal with Malevolent Shrine. Tough noogies. If it has Chimera Shadow Garden, you have to deal with Chimera Shadow Garden. Tough noogies. If it has Absolute Void, your technique's turned off, buddy. But then again, that's another one that only grows more powerful depending on how much Mahoraga has adapted to. Because once again, it's like a contract thing. If you have not contractually agreed with Mahoraga on anything, then it's not going to be able to affect you. But even still, I think that incremental growth fits within Mahoraga in terms of its understanding and our understanding of it and its technique. We don't actually have a name. I don't think Mahoraga's adaptation technique has a name. We call it adaptation, and the narrative it's noted as adaptation, but I don't think it actually has any specific name yet. But it fits within Mahoraga's technique. It is an expansion of it. It incorporates a sure hit because it's the strongest Shikigami in the series. Like, dare I say, pretty confidently, even stronger than Rika. It probably one-tap Rika. I think it fits within that in terms of it having a sure hit. It's everything that you would hypothetically want from a Mahoraga domain, at least in my mind. And what would I call it? A world adapted, domain expansion, a world's... You know what? Call it domain expansion at world's end, because the world would literally be over. You'd be done. Your world would be at its end if Mahoraga's already adapted to all the phenomena you can produce. However, that's what I think. Those are 3 separate ideas for domains that I have for Mahoraga. But what ideas do you guys have? Please let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and make sure to make sure you hit that little notification bell so you do not miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do have a Patreon down below where you can support me for as low as $1 a month to get things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Now, thank you guys so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That with a Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our $3 members, Wakanda Plays and Red Wolf 4765. I'd like to give a very big thank you to our $5 patrons, Sean Gray, Red Wolf 4765, Midnight Gemlord, Kevin, Demix LND, and Art Goon. I'd like to give another super big thank you to our $10 patrons, Robbie Uchiha, Joaquin, and Idemokami. And a final very big thank you to our $25 member, Alex Ice Rose. I'd like to give a very, very big thank you to our $25 patron, Igneo Lynn.